Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Going Deep with Aaron Watson. A fun and insightful episode for you here today. I interviewed Tucker Max, the multi-time New York Times best-selling author. His most popular book, I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell, was a bestseller from 2006 to 2012. I read it when I was in ninth grade, which is probably a little too young to be reading that type of material. It's a little graphic, to say the least, but he's an accomplished author, a former angel investor, entrepreneur, and has recently launched a new project, a new company called Book in a Box, and we'll get into a lot of details about the genesis of the company and what its intentions are, what its goals are. But basically, it's a service that allows experts to quote-unquote write a book without actually writing it. They don't have to be an author, they don't have to be skilled in the art of writing, but it allows them and facilitates their expertise, their knowledge being translated into book form and shared with a larger audience for a multitude of reasons. We get into a lot of good stuff here, and his company is really, really fascinating. So a great episode for aspiring authors, entrepreneurs, and just fans of Tucker Max. He's a great guy, a captivating author, and a pretty funny dude. So enjoy my conversation with Tucker Max. So Tucker, thank you so much for coming on Going Deep with Aaron
Of
Watson.
course, man. Happy to be here.
There's a ton that I want to touch base with you on today. Definitely cool that we have this multiple time New York Times bestselling author on the show. But really, the story these days is that you're helping other people produce high quality books with your new company, Book in a Box. So maybe to just start things off, I don't know if you want to start with the genesis of the company or the mission and how that's expanding, but it's pretty exciting that you're kind of helping people who wouldn't necessarily qualify themselves as authors, but are experts get their message out there and educate other people.
Yeah, so I can tell you the story of how it started. Not too long. Basically, I was at an entrepreneur dinner, and this woman approached me and asked me the same question that people have been asking me, that anyone who has a book out gets asked, and people have been asking me for more than a decade. How do I write my book? And but she was a little different. She said, "Look, I don't have time to sit at a computer for a year. I have this company to run. I have a husband, a kid. Like I'm busy, but I still want to put my ideas into a book. I still want to write a book. How do I do it without having to go through the normal process?" And so I was like, well, it's impossible to write a book without writing it. That it's literally in the word, you know. And she it was kind of funny. She totally called me out. She's like, look, this is an entrepreneur dinner. Either you're going to help me solve my problem, or maybe you shouldn't be here. And I was like, okay, all right, all right. So I kind of rethought, how do you get an idea into a book? And the insight that I eventually came up with was that sitting down to type is writing, and writing is actually not the most important part of a book. The important part of a book is getting an idea from one head to another. It's just a medium of conveyance. It's not There's nothing inherent in writing that's that magical. So I realized, and then of course I remembered, my history. How many great thinkers in Western history never actually wrote a word down, but have books? Socrates, Jesus, Buddha, Malcolm X. I mean, you go down the list. There's all these amazingly brilliant people for whom other people wrote down what they said. And I realized, well, why can't we do this with Melissa? Why can't I talk to her and interview her and turn it into a book? And that insight by itself is not super new. But what we did at Book in a Box is, instead of just kind of winging it, right, and talking to her for a while and writing what I thought her book should be about, I couldn't ghostwrite her book, because her book's about pop-up retail, which I know exactly zero about. So I had to think, well, how can I create a process where I can ask her questions and I can get the book in her, out of her, but it's not me thinking and learning about pop-up retail. It's not my words. It's not my ideas. It's got to be her book in her words and her ideas. We created a structured way to interview her that did just that. So we ended up with this book that was literally nothing but her. I was just a translator, essentially, between her and the book, her ideas in a written book. And it ended up working really well. And then it kind of blew up. I mean, there's so many people who have books in them but don't have the time or desire to sit at a computer and type them out. And so that's what our company does. We turn ideas into books.
And it's safe to say that that success, you're kind of brushing over it here, but kind of took you by surprise. You weren't in the mindset of, all right, this is going to launch and this is going to have an immediate massive client base. You kind of caught you off guard and you just kind of rode that wave. It was something that you latched onto as opposed to dragging over your shoulder.
100%, dude. Like first off, I didn't even think it was going to work because, I'm a writer. Like I think through my fingers now. Essentially. And so to me, 2 years ago or whatever, I was like, there's just no way that this will even work. But then it worked great. And so, but even then, it feels stupid to say this, but like after a decade of people asking me how to write a book without having to be a writer, I still didn't realize the huge demand that was gonna that this service would generate or would satisfy. And so like once we finished with her, like she referred a bunch of people to us and they were all like, hey, it wasn't like, hey, that's a good idea for a company. They were like, hey, here's $10,000. Can you do the same thing for me? And I was like, what? Like, we're not even selling this. And then I went on Lewis Howes's podcast to talk about something totally different and talked about that for like 10 or 20 minutes because Lewis is dyslexic and he had just finished his book and we were talking about that issue. And like I kind of mentioned what we were doing and he's like, oh, that's so cool. He thought I was doing it as a company. And so he kind of told all his like, oh, all my listeners, you guys should go check this out. He's like, Tucker, what do you call it? And I had jokingly called it Book in a Box with my co-founder, Zach, the guy who became my co-founder. He just helped me with the first book. And so I said, I don't know, I guess we call it Book in a Box. And so then that's actually became the name of the company because of Lewis's podcast. We got like 8 clients in the next 2 months. And we did like $200,000 of sales or something in 2 months. It was nuts. All because this woman called me out because I was being arrogant about how I thought books could be written, you know?
Yeah, that's wild. I'm curious. So you're at this entrepreneurial dinner, and obviously you had some other entrepreneurial experience in addition to launching these books, marketing these books. You'd been doing some angel investing, had your hands dipped in a couple other projects. How has this forced you to grow or adapt your own entrepreneurial skill set, business mindset, and what have you had to learn that wasn't necessarily relevant in some of your previous endeavors?
Oh, dude, it's so I had a lot of skills at getting from 0 to 1. Like I'm really good at thinking up ideas, finding ideas, testing them, and kind of making them viable. I mean, that's what an artist does. I wrote books that sold millions of copies, and to people who don't read, to young men who don't buy books and don't read. So like any artist is good at taking nothing and turning it into something. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's not enough to take nothing and turn it into something. Once something exists, once you have 0 to 1, the next step is to go 1 to 10, which is essentially that's going from product market fit to an actually scaled, growing company. And to be quite honest, I had no idea how to do that. Like you said, I had a bunch of experience angel investing, and I'd started some companies before, but they were really mainly small things that never got above $1 million, $2 million a year in revenue. And then I would either sell them or do something with them. I never scaled or grew a company. And so in the last year, like we're about 2 years old, the company. In the last year, the first year was product market fit, like getting everything kind of running and started. And then the second year was scaling. Dude, I mean, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. It's incredible how different it is to start an idea than to grow an idea. And here's I can tell you 50 things I got wrong, but the stone cold reality is I was not a good CEO. And I just recently fired myself as CEO of my own company and hired brought in an outside guy who's already scaled multiple companies and is freaking amazing at actually building business processes and scaling them. And he's come in and turned us, not like we were doing bad. We're still growing. We did $1 million last quarter. Like, we're doing really well. But God, the stuff he did, it's like all the details, right? I mean, like, dude, benefits and like hiring processes and like all these things that like I like to call the adult things, you know? Like, I'm not good at the adult things. He's amazing at the adult things, and he came in and has totally he's set us up to get 10 or 100 times bigger over the next 5 years, and I was failing at that.
Wow. Well, kudos to you at least for the humility to recognize that you should bring someone else in to kind of take advantage of that opportunity. And there's definitely, I'm really hearing you recognize the complexity associated with building that larger organization where some of your other projects are maybe more one-off or just these smaller organizations. I think that's a really important takeaway for folks. I'm curious, getting back to the service that Book in a Box is providing. You mentioned you are a multi-time bestseller. I'm curious, when people come in to use your service and get this book made for them, how you manage or identify expectations for the book that's being put together. I know that in some cases it's easy for people to like have their sights set really high, and that's probably what makes them high performers. But can everyone write a bestseller? Should everyone even have that as their goal?
No, actually, in fact, we tell people not to have that as a goal at all. It's a great question and something that we struggled with early on. We don't struggle with it anymore, but early on in the history of the company, we absolutely had people coming to us who had crazy, unrealistic expectations, and people who saw a book as essentially as a vanity object or something to sort of build their ego, right? And so for them, if a book doesn't sell, whatever, 1 million copies and become a massive bestseller, then they don't want to do it. We don't work with those people at all. And even if those people have, our service is expensive. We charge 20 grand. And even if those people could pay, 10 times that, we won't work with them because you can't just magic a book into a bestseller. A lot of things have to go right. But more importantly, what we tell people is that if you are thinking about a bestseller list, you're probably already wrong. Because our clients are people who use books. They look at a book as an investment. And an investment specifically in marketing, and look at it as an all-purpose marketing tool for themselves and their career. And they're it's people who are using a book to get a specific result, whether they want to drive leads to their business or more clients or charge more for clients or do speaking or raise their visibility or authority in the media. There's a million things a book does a really good job at, but measuring the success of a book by book sales is actually one of the worst ways to measure a book success. And we almost never take those clients because here's the thing. Even if we do an amazing job, right? We do everything right. If their book sells 20,000 copies, which by the way is a lot for a nonfiction book, they're going to be mad at us. Even though the reason it's selling 20,000 copies, one is because we did a great job with their book, and two, maybe that's the only audience there is for it. In fact, it almost certainly is. It's nearly only like 10 books a year sell 1 million copies. It's incredibly hard to do that. That's like saying that your retirement strategy is to win the lottery. Like, that just doesn't make any sense, you know?
And I think just in case you threw out that $20,000 number there for the audience, that may some people's jaws may be agape. And I want to just acknowledge the fact that a lot of the people who are coming in for this service are very busy, usually very successful in whatever they're doing. And this is something that's augmenting the other things that they're working on.
Think about it like this. Would someone with a business that's making $5 million a year, would they even think twice about spending 20 grand on a Facebook campaign? Of course it's not. That's nothing. That's actually tiny. Like, if you think of it as part of your marketing budget, it's a minuscule amount. And if you understand if you actually look into what it costs to produce a book, whether you're talking about hiring a ghostwriter or if your time is valuable, you're looking at, for most people, 1,000 to 2,000 hours to write a book, to go all the way through the process. If your time's worth even $100 an hour, using us is a massive, massive way to save money. Now, look, honestly, most people, chances are, and I'm not trying to be a dick, but if you're listening to a lot of podcasts, your time probably isn't super valuable. And so, yeah, absolutely, you should not use our service because there's no way for you to recoup that money. But for people who are serious and who've accomplished a lot, it's actually a great bargain. We actually have problems because a lot of people, the people, our clients, think we can't do a good job because we're not charging enough.
And that's because a lot of ghostwriters would charge more than
Oh, dude,
$20,000.
a good ghostwriter is $75 to $100,000. Absolutely.
But that ghostwriter, really what's happening in that instance is it's the ghostwriter's voice, the ghostwriter's idea, and then you're tying someone's name to it for marketing purposes or reputation building. And really the process, the nuts and bolts here is trying to extract the voice of the client that you're working with. I wanted to talk about, so you referenced the people who maybe the service isn't right for, and you do provide materials, offer suggestions to folks for making their own book. So you're not trying to keep your process hidden
No.
behind smoke and mirrors or anything, and really getting into the nitty gritty of producing a book as someone who's done it successfully multiple times. Where should people be starting? There's probably people out there that think I have a book, I'm not sure, I have never done it before, which can lead to hesitation in some cases. Where is the natural starting point that you usually work with your clients on?
It's a great question. Before I even answer the question, you're exactly right. Our process is no secret. We've written a book about it, actually. It's on Amazon. That it describes exactly what our process is with the exact templates that we use and everything. And then also my assistant, Alex, put together a landing page for your listeners. If they go to bookinabox.com/going deep, they can download that exact PDF for free. And like if your time's not super valuable, but you still want to write a book, download the PDF. It walks you through step by step the entire process. And now we start with where your question is. And obviously the PDF is free. It's no problem. But we start with where your question is in the PDF. Should you be writing a book, right? And so the question, there's 3 questions you need to answer for yourself before you write a book. Why am I writing it? Who is it for? And why will they care? If you can answer all 3 of those clearly and they tie together, then you have your book. If you can't, then you probably shouldn't be writing a book, right? So you need to know why you're writing it is what you expect to get from it. Like what result do you want this book to create for you? Like if you want to be a speaker who's getting paid $5,000 a speech, then that's a specific result you can get from a book. But if you're like, oh, I want to be famous, then that's nonsense, right? That's not a specific result. That's just a hope and a wish. And the second question is, who are you trying to reach? So if there's a specific result, then you need to reach someone to get that result, right? Like if you're writing the book to drive leads to your business, right, or to drive clients to your business, then the audience are potential clients for your business. And that kind of feeds into the third question, which is what do you have to say that's interesting to the audience? Well, if you have something to say, some knowledge or wisdom or technique or something that audience you're trying to reach will find interesting, then definitely write a book because it can definitely help you. But if you kind of go through the process and realize, you know what, I don't have anything to say that's actually interesting, then you need to first off, you definitely should not be writing a book, and then you need to re-examine exactly what it is you're trying to sell or what your strategy is. See?
I've read the book. There's a lot in there also about the actual production of the material, but I'm curious almost to get to the end point of marketing the book. That's something that you've been very successful with. We have folks on the show who are coming, talking about their book, authors who are trying to get their book sales up as well. How do you help your clients market books, and what strategies have you seen out there that either are very effective that you recommend, or things that you point and say, stay away from that, that's a waste of time?
Right. So there's a couple things about book marketing. So the first thing you've got to understand about book marketing is that there is no such thing as book marketing, right? No, seriously. It sounds super weird to say, especially from someone like me. But here's what I mean by that: is so many authors will write their book and the book they want to write, and then they'll say, okay, hey, how do I market this? Well, if you don't start by thinking about the marketing, you've probably already lost. You've created a situation where you can't market a book, right? So book marketing actually starts before you write the book. And in fact, it starts with the process I described to you before, which is understanding why you're writing the book, who you're trying to reach with the book, and why they're going to care. If you can answer those questions, then marketing is really easy. If you can't answer those questions, then marketing is impossible, right? Now, here's the reason why, even if you can answer those questions, why book marketing as a general activity doesn't really exist, or is not something you should focus on. Because the idea that you need to, first off, there's no such thing as book marketing in the sense of like there's one way to market a book. Because that's like saying, hey man, how do I get someone to watch my ad? Or how do I market my ad? That doesn't no one cares about an ad, right? They care about what an ad, like a company, they care about what an ad gets them, which is they're looking for sales. Same thing with a book. No one cares, none of our clients care about having a book. They care about what they think a book is going to get them, whether it's clients or attention or visibility or speeches or prestige or anything like that. That's what they care about. If they only cared about a book and nothing else, then they would just have what's called a diary, and there's no reason for them to publish it, right? So that's why you should not think about book marketing. You should think, why am I writing a book, and how do I achieve that goal? And a book is a way to achieve a larger goal. A book is not an end of itself. And the only person for whom a book is the end itself are novelists. If you're a novelist or a professional writer, then you're trying to sell copies of your book, right? So then you really do have to spend time marketing the book itself. But for most of your listeners, and anyone, entrepreneurial, business, consultants, anyone like that at all, the book is just marketing. It is actually marketing for something else, not the thing that you should be marketing itself. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I think that that's really clarifying for people that if you're making something that's just for you, then you can't necessarily have that expectation that people are just going to come to it in droves. But if you write something that's providing value for others, the great books that are out there, they're not being marketed 5, 10, 15 years after they've been produced. They're getting referenced or recommended by different influencers, your friend, your grandma, your aunt saying, hey, I read this and it was fantastic, or, oh, you've got to read this next, add it to your list. That's really how the quality books, or if it's very niche, and for, like you said, the pop-up retail example, someone who's new to that industry will get recommended, oh, well, you got to read that book. That's the authority in that space.
Right, exactly. So that's the other thing I was going to say, is that if you're, the only way to market a book in a sustaining way is word of mouth. It's what you just said. The only way that books are marketed successfully in the long term is word of mouth. And the only way to generate word of mouth is to first write a great book that meets the needs of an audience. Number one. And if you do that, I don't want to say the book markets itself 100%, because nothing fully, totally markets itself. But then marketing is very easy.
That's a great point. Curious here, we're going to start wrapping up, but I want to talk a little bit about the company that you've created. You talked about bringing in the new CEO, how Book in the Box was born from this little conversation that you had at an entrepreneurial dinner. But this is something that you see evolving out of just a book production company to kind of a larger platform. Are you comfortable elaborating on that at all?
Of course. So I'll give you the overall vision, and then if you want to dive deeper, we can. So
Sure.
what we kind of stumbled into and realized is that there is no magic in writing a book, that there are just a set of, that once someone has an idea, a good idea for a book, that turning that idea into a finished book is just a series of steps, right? And that we could essentially turn that series of steps almost into an algorithm, and we could insert certain people to do certain things at each step with the author, so that all the author had to do was know what they were talking about and get on the phone with us, and we do everything else, right? And then once we got this kind of working with a book, I realized, well, why are we stopping with books? Like almost any creative product, whether you're talking about a speech or a podcast or a video course or a slide deck, a presentation, almost anything like that is the same way. There is just a series of steps to get from idea to finished media product. And so our actual long-term goal is to be the company that essentially turns ideas into finished media products, not just books. So like our next sort of step is we just sort of soft launched a new division called Platform in a Box that Zach, my co-founder, is building. And because so many authors, it kind of ties into what I talked about before. None of our authors just want books. They want what a book will get them, right? And so a book is the first step for a lot of these people to get the things that they want. But then they need to have a whole platform around the book. They need to have a great site. They need to have all these sorts of things to build the book, right? Or to get the attention they're looking for. And so what we do is we build the thing around them. They don't have to do anything. We're kind of the ones that are doing all the sort of things for them, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you. I'm curious. You talked about the authors that you work with wanting different things. Are there specific goals that are most common? Authors are coming to you with, I have this goal, and you kind of hear that over and over again. You've kind of really honed in on that being a primary goal for the authors.
Yeah. So the most important, the biggest thing that we see are, it's kind of unusual. I think there's not one thing. What there is there are. I guess I would boil all of it down to attention. To like what maybe I would call it premium visibility. What people want, what authors want, they want to be well known and they want to be seen as the experts that they are, right? Because that attention gets them other things. It gets them all the other things they want, whether it's clients or money or et cetera, et cetera. They want the authority and the visibility and the attention to get the other things. And that's really what a book gives you, is that it's one of the best conduits to kind of put your name out there in a really prestigious, high status, verifiable way. If you have a book, it's an honest signal of intelligence and success and all the things that most people want to project.
Do you see this as somewhere that is just going to continue to be a more valuable space to play? And you use the word attention. And to me, that is really the big shift that has happened, in the sense that instead of just media channels on TV or the radio that are very, very limited in the number of places that your attention can go, there's seemingly endless podcasts, books, websites to visit, and the competition for that attention is always on the increase. Is that something that you see and is kind of guiding your vision to creating these platforms and extending the In a Box brand?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. That's actually how I talk about it internally. I don't, on podcasts, usually go this deep because most people don't know what I'm talking about. But let me run you through. So there's basically three major secular shifts that the human race has gone through in terms of economies. The first are scarcities. The first scarcity was land. Like once we stopped, actually the first scarcity was food. When you're a hunter-gatherer, finding food is always the primary sort of motivation, which is what drove agriculture, right? Once we shifted into an agricultural epoch, then the scarcity became arable land, good land for planting, right? Now, from there, once we moved into an industrial, once machines essentially started replacing labor, then we moved into an industrial phase, and the scarcity was capital, was money, because industrial processes require upfront investment. Now we're moving out of an industrial era and into an information era, right? A digital economy and an information era. So essentially where all the things that copies of things used to cost money, Now copies of things are free, especially of information, but eventually copies of almost everything are going to be free, and I mean almost everything. So what is going to be the scarcity in a world of abundance? Attention. That is the one thing you cannot make more of, is time, right? And so that's actually the ultimate driving force and philosophy behind not just Book in a Box, but the entire company I just described. Is if you have an idea and you want to turn it into a media product to get attention, you're going to come to us. We want to be the middleman between that. Because think about it. If you have an idea for something great, do you want to go learn how to shoot video, how to write a book, how to structure a speech, how to do all these things that don't have anything to do with your idea? You can always go do that on your own if you want. But for most people, it's going to be easier and cheaper to use a service that turns their ideas, into the finished product for them. You see?
Cool. Well, this has been a blast, Tucker. I want to start wrapping up here. We already talked about the link for the PDF to the book, but what other digital coordinates can we direct people to so they can learn more about you or the company or everything like that?
The company is just bookinabox.com, and then the PDF is either the book is on Amazon or the PDF is at the link I told you, which is bookinabox.com/going deep. That's a free download of the PDF. That's the best place to start.
Cool. Well, as always, I'll be linked to in the show notes at goingdeepwithaaron.com/podcast, the best place to find the show notes for this and every episode of the show. Tucker, it has been a blast talking to you. I've learned a lot, and I want to give you the mic one last time so that you can take it away with a personal challenge for the audience.
Personal challenge. All right. So this is going to be a little bit heavy, but I was just thinking about this with somebody else, so it's at the front of my mind. I did an exercise with a friend of mine where he had all these issues and women, this and that. And so I eventually just started asking him why. Why do you do this? Why do you do that? And we eventually got pretty deep, and he kind of understood a lot of things about himself. And most people never ever stop and ask themselves why they do what they do. And not just one, you don't ask why once or twice or 3 times. You keep asking it until you essentially get to an irreducible answer, right? And that's really hard to do, and it's usually really painful for people, because what they realize is either they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, or they're doing something because of a reason they didn't actually understand, and they realize they shouldn't be doing it. My challenge to your listeners would be play that game with yourself. Why do I do whatever it is you're doing? Going to school, this job, as opposed to any other things. Why? And really ask and really dive in and really examine that. I think most people, when they do that, find that they are not living the life they thought they were, and they can from there make changes. But you can't make these changes until you actually examine what it is you're doing and you make explicit why.
That's a fantastic challenge, Tucker. I think that not only is that a great exercise for eliminating negative behaviors that you have, but it can also be really powerful in pursuing goals of yours. So if you have a really positive why, a really big why, that's going to give you the extra oomph to maybe get through a tough day or a really difficult or heavy workload. I think that that's a fantastic challenge.
Yep.
Thank you so much again for coming on, Tucker. We just went deep with Tucker Max. Hope everyone out there has a great day. Hey, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Going Deep with Aaron Watson. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Tucker Max and that you'll hit subscribe if you haven't already done so. I don't care what player you're on, Stitcher, Overcast, iTunes, Podbay, whatever it may be. I'd love to know what it is, but more importantly, I'd hope that you're subscribed so you can tune into every great forthcoming episode of the show that we've got coming down the pipe. One I'm particularly excited about is with author Jim Miller. If you like Tucker Max, if you're an avid reader, and you've ever heard of the oral oral histories of either ESPN or Saturday Night Live that Jim wrote. He's got a new book out about CAA, the agency for the biggest and maybe most notorious agency in Hollywood, that's in his unique oral history style. I encourage you to check that out and make sure that you're subscribed and continue to listen to Going Deep with Aaron Watson. Thanks.